7.9 FM. It's the third and final hour of Viewpoint with Dan Morris. Call now, 272-9228. That's 272-9228. Call now. Your opinions are valued on Viewpoint. And
thank you, John Garrett. Those are the saddest words in all of talk radio. The last and final hour of the Viewpoint show today. And Bess Blackman said, I thought the show was going up there. No, it's just today, guys. News Talk 107.9 FM, 272-9228, 1-800-289-9228. If you're a first-time caller, let Jay, the producer, know. We'll get your name in for the drawing for the Pepper Tree Steak and Wine gift basket of 2 great steaks, 2 twice-baked potatoes, 1 fabulous bottle of wine, courtesy of Moi and Pepper Tree Steak and Wine. Don't forget about First Friday at Pepper Tree Shopping Center. Leadoff hitter will be Pepper Tree Steak and Wine. Of course, places like Vintage Olive, the Gallery East, Duck Salon, all those will be there. And you can go in, if you're 2 of you, wristband would be $8 instead of $10. It's $5 a person, donation going to the Tauga County Humane Society. And then finally, I want to thank Southern Orthopedic Surgeons for being our sponsor of last hour. If you need orthopedic care, you can get it today by calling 613-9000. Let me bring in, with applause, my show coordinator, the one and only, the lovely Jenny Johnston.
Hey Dan, good morning, Jay, darling.
Darling, aww, everybody liked the darling part of
That
things.
was so funny.
Was that cute?
That was cute. Hey, baby. Well, hey, darling. I was laughing out loud at that. It was hysterical.
I caught Jay off guard on that one for sure. Well, let's see. Well, what do you see going on in the news? Or tell me where you thought on the Sue Bell Cobb thing. You saw some things in her on the video of her that were kind of that you caught.
Her body language. I've started kind of looking at that because Bill O'Reilly has this body language expert in his show every now and then when I can tolerate Bill O'Reilly. And I noticed she slowed her words down and then she put her head back, like nose in the air, and she touched herself when she said, and me too.
Touched her shoulder.
Touched her shoulder. And it just, the condescension on that. Anyway, when I found out I was doing like your little 2-step dance around in the bed, my dog thought I was rather crazy, but I was doing a 2-step dance in my living room. And then Bill Armistead, when I called Chairman Armistead yesterday to see if he could weigh in today like he did, first thing out of his mouth I said, could you weigh in about Sue Bell Cobb stepping down? He goes, well, you do know, Jenny, that they've appointed me. And I laughed so hard. And I was like, yay!
Bill has been a great friend for a lot of years. I've known him back from my tenure with Deputy Chief of Staff in Governor Hunt's administration. But a great guy, and he's doing a very good job in this position as chairman of the Republican Party in the state of Alabama. Has a lot of people coming into the state. Has Rick Perry, Herman Cain, Mitt Romney. He said he was trying to get Michelle Bachmann. We need to get on Michelle Bachmann. But that's part of what's happening with an early primary for the state of Alabama, having a March primary. We're going to get a lot of attention here, and that's going to be great.
Thank goodness we have a March primary. Can you believe that it's changed? I mean, we will really benefit from that, don't you think?
Absolutely. That will give us a lot of activity here. We'll get our fingerprints on the presidential primary, and in Alabama will mean something with this, and I think that's going to be a good thing. A lot of people will ask me, well, Dan, why is Iowa so important? And the history of that is in 1976, there was a little upstart governor named Jimmy Carter who won Iowa, and that with very little knowledge of Jimmy Carter. Because he won, he got into the spotlight, and then he started his trek, and there's a great book called Marathon Man that really illustrated that. And then Iowa had a different importance, and Ronald Reagan lost Iowa in 1980 to a guy named George Bush, but we won New Hampshire and won everything after that. And so Iowa has been kind of this, look at me type thing.
I have always wondered what made Iowa queen of the world. I'm so glad you finally explained that.
And that is it. But I believe it's losing its importance because, as New Hampshire is, New Hampshire used to be the one. If you won New Hampshire, no president up to Bill Clinton during the time of primaries had not won New Hampshire and won the presidency. Bill Clinton's the only one and he changed that. and then it started the succession. I believe the South is playing a much more important role in Republican politics in particular.
I agree, and I think that there are some people out there who I'm trying to get on the show who are realizing that not just the Bible Belt, but Alabama is the buckle to the Bible Belt. It's very important.
Well, we have a good mixture here. Unlike South Carolina is the early primary. It's a Saturday primary. It is. Yeah, they always say there's on Saturday. But ours is going to be a little bit different. And because of some of the diversity issues in Alabama, because of some of the newness of Republicans by nature of everything else, having a new leadership in the House and Senate being Republican leadership, I think that's going to play a big role. And I think Alabama, you're going to see Alabama on the national news circuit where they'll say Michelle Bachmann in Alabama said type thing. One of the things that people don't realize is that when you're part of the traveling campaign for president and you're deciding where you're going to make news, where you do that is important. There's what you say, and then there's the where you say it.
Location, location, location. Why? Well, Alabama's always seemed to be the redheaded stepchild. They look at Alabamians as being a bunch of rednecks and, hoo-ahs.
Rednecks, Alabama now. But one of the things to watch is, do some of these presidential candidates start making news in Alabama? In other words, they make major statements in Alabama where they can say, and Herman Cain in Tuscaloosa, Alabama today, or Rick Perry in Alabama, in Birmingham, Alabama today said, because you get to pick where you're going to do this. You're picking it based on time, and you're picking it based on location. You don't want to make a major statement at 4:45 in the afternoon because it'll never make the news. You want to do it from 11 to 1. That way you're assured to make the network news plus the local news.
Well, and that's why we're so thankful to Bill Armistead for traveling to all these places and talking to Rick Perry and opening up lines with Michelle Bachmann, Mitt Romney. I mean, we're very thankful for him bringing them to Alabama. That's why I'm working on some things. And
well, it's a smart move for Republicans. Republicans will be able to raise money from that. They're going to get exposure. Like I said, Alabamians get to meet these candidates. These candidates get to meet Alabama. And again, I harken back to 1976. Ronald Reagan came in with an upstart group of folks, a little probate judge named Guy Hunt from Coleman, Alabama, and beat the big dogs, beat the Red Blunts, beat the Perry Hoopers, beat the Arthur Outlaws, the Ollie Dale Champs for these coveted delegate slots. And that then all of a sudden, wham, all the establishment was for Gerald Ford, the folks were for Ronald Reagan. And when I say beat, I'm talking about beat 3-1. It was an amazing night to watch that. I was working the political side, not the event side. But then Ronald Reagan came back for Guy Hunt in 1978 and made a point of it because Guy Hunt delivered the state of Alabama for Ronald Reagan. And it was critical. New Hampshire and Alabama were two critical states for him.
what was it about Guy Hunt that got him? And what was it about him personally that
Guy Hunt was in charge of the Reagan apparatus in Alabama. He was a probate judge, had met Ronald Reagan at an Amway distributorship meeting, fell in love with him, just thought he was the greatest thing in the world.
Well, how could you not?
And really, and he then started organizing the state of Alabama. I was working as a volunteer political person. That's why you need to start out as a volunteer in the political world. And we organized the state. And I remember when Reagan went to Clanton, Alabama, and we did this event at a baseball diamond, and I did everything I possibly could to turn out the event. There were thousands upon thousands of people to see Ronald Reagan in Clanton, Alabama.
Wow.
It was
year?
unbelievable. I was 76. I was I think it was May of 76. But that Reagan got in late. He had a great showing in New Hampshire. In all these late primaries that were in the South, he started doing really well in Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, and places like that. And that catapulted Reagan to where he almost won the nomination. I mean, he was just shy. If Mississippi would have stayed with them, probably would have gotten the nomination in Kansas City. but didn't get the nomination. Gerald Ford did. Gerald Ford lost to Jimmy Carter, and then Ronald Reagan comes back in 1980 and wins big against an incumbent president, which is huge.
Well, why do you think everything, once Ronald Reagan and George and the two Bushes, why do you think that we are where we are now? We were doing so well with Reagan. You can't look back on history and see what he did right, and now we're...
I know the answer to this.
Answer it.
Terrible candidates.
Yes.
Terrible candidates.
Lord have mercy.
How we selected Bob Dole to be the nominee.
I know. He was like a cadaver.
Well,
like he'd been embalmed.
Bob Dole is a great guy.
Yeah,
I traveled with Bob Dole. I did some events for him. Great guy. But he was given the Republican nomination because he was the guy that was the Senate Majority Leader, and they thought he deserved it. And he was so bad. He was a terrible... on a one-to-one basis in a small crowd. I'll give you an example of what Bob Dole would do. We would do an event. He would come off the stage. Instead of working a rope line, he would go to the back of the room at the door, and he would shake hands with everyone going out like you would coming out of a church and shaking hands with the preacher that had just preached. He would sit there, and it may take 45 minutes, but he would shake hands with every person who wanted to shake hands with him.
Well, take
Great
my question.
one-on-one, terrible big event guy.
Well, here's the question I'm really asking is, when you see how good Ronald Reagan was, why can't the next candidate say, what a great example, let me try to emulate that using my own personality, but learn from him, and then we get these the press?
Yeah, the press has a problem with that. John McCain was another example of a really bad candidate. But what we're doing is Republican politics has been run by the Republican apparatus in states. Reagan could communicate to the public, and that's why he did so well in '76 and why he won in 1980, is that he could go out and talk to those folks, and that made all the difference out there.
Well,
and no one else has been able to do that to this day.
I know, there will never be another Ronald Reagan. Well, we felt his sincerity. We felt his love of country. We felt like we had somebody who was in Washington, the big guy, and he was going to protect us like a dad does. You know, the security, I felt.
Women told me that all the time. They would, when they would meet him, they would say, "I just want to go up and hug him." He was like my dad, and there's just something about him.
I think my mom wanted to kiss him on the mouth.
We won't go there. Nancy, watch out. News Talk 107.9 FM, Viewpoint Show with Dan Morris. Jenny Johnston, my show coordinator's sitting in with me for a little bit. You have questions, comments, or viewpoints, 272-9228.
If you're talking